What's going on YouTube? WestHobbiesRC. So today we are back with another miniature aircraft build. Today we are back with the miniature aircraft interceptor gasser. So we have the gasser kit here. We have the OS Power Boost GT15 pipe. We have the OS GT15 gas engine. V-Bar Evo. We are running MKS X6 650 SL on Cyclic and throttle. We are also running the 680 on tail. We are not going to run a choke servo because we are running a different carburetor. But if you are going to use the stock with that, you would need an additional choke servo. We have the Mikado mini capacitor backup pack and the Mikado engine temperature sensor. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let's get started. So step one, frame side. So we're going to need the frame side that doesn't have the cutout for the fuel tank. So this is going to be the left frame side. You will see this hole for the choke servo and the hole for the throttle servo, cyclic servo, tail servo. Now, I just realized that the cyclic servos are full size. The throttle and choke servo are mini servos. So we'll have to get some mini servos. We can't use our X6 MKSs here. That's okay. Again, we're not using choke because we're running the upgraded carburetor. So the first step is to grab your actual canopy mounts, your spacers, a couple screws, and your magnet, and that's all going to go here. So let's get that done and see what it looks like. So we got our front canopy mount, one spacer, and then we also went and got the front carbon tray on with the grommet installed and a secondary carbon tray. Now we are going to install the upper bearing block. Now this guy is going to sit into here just like this. We want the bearing to face the bottom, the lip to face up. So your two back holes will go there just like that. So we're going to get that on, get the lower bearing block on and the bottom spacer. And we also have to install our throttle servo. Got the bearing blocks installed, the lower and upper. We also have our throttle servo installed. We went with the Torque 1208 Black Edition. So you can see it fits in from the inside of the frame, and then just the splines stick out. Splines go towards the front. So now we are going to assemble the belt idler pulleys. Very important that this is two-sided, flat on one side. You see the little ridge cutouts? Those are what this guy, you see the bearing flange sticking up? That's going to sit down onto here just like this, and then run your screws in from the top. Got the boom clamps installed. One important thing to note is that the three holes, you'll see three holes on top, go on top, and the slits go on the bottom right corner of both of your boom clamps. So now let's get the carbon fiber tray that goes on top. You're going to have two longer screws on this side. That is what clamps the boom. So you're not going to lock tight those. And you're going to have two shorter screws on this side, and you're going to lock tight those. We have one side completed. So we have our tail servo installed. We have our throttle servo. We were not able to install our back elevator cyclic servo because our kit is missing the spacers, the plastic spacers that go to space the servo out. So we have to order those. So unfortunately, got to wait on that, but we can keep moving forward. And we are going to trim these screws down because they come really, really long. So we're going to trim those down so they don't look so bad. These are okay. So now we're going to grab the other frame side, which is this guy right here. Now in the manual, it'll tell you to put these inserts if you are going to use a RPM sensor off of the flywheel. We are using the X-Guard sensor that is designed for the OS GT15, which we'll explain that when we get there. So now we are going to take this carbon fiber tray here. You'll notice this little guy has little tab cutouts, and that sits down into this part of the frame just like that. So push that together. It'll fit down in there nicely. You'll see the little tabs right there. So now we can take our frame, position it into place, take our opposite frame side, line it up, and we can start putting all of our screws in. And we got our other frame side started. So we got our screws in the top, got our screws along here, we got our front magnet canopy post put in. So now we just have to go through and do everything on this side like we did on this side to put all your screws in. I'm going to figure out a way to mount my elevator servo because I'd like to get that done just so I can keep moving forward. I have some carbon fiber spacer plates. I'm going to see if I can figure out ones to do that so I don't have to wait on buying the MA part number and get those here. So let's get this side all together, get the tank mounts and all that in there. Let's see what it looks like. So we went and got the tail pulley put in. So you slide your belt through and then you got the tail pulley itself. You'll notice on the tail pulley, there is 2 set screws, holes. So you see 2 threaded holes. So that pulley is going to slide into the frame just like that. Now, if you look at the main shaft, the hole all the way through is going to go on the head, towards the head block. And you'll look at the shaft and there'll be a divot in the shaft. That divot is so that this set screw, you can notice this set screw has a dip into it. That is going to set down into the shaft just like that, and it's going to lock in there. And then you'll come back with your second set screw, which is a flat set screw, and that'll just go onto the shaft on the corner side, and your hub gear is going to slide into here on top, and then this collar will go there. Once you tighten these 2 set screws up with Loctite, then you can tighten this collar and lock it down into place, so that way it'll adjust your up and down on your gear. So our gear is in, tail pulley and belt is on. So you're gonna push the gear and shaft down until it hits the bottom bearing block. Then you're gonna pull that collar up, tighten your screw down. That is done. Now we're going to move on to start assembling the engine. So we have our clutch bell here. We have our starter shaft. It's going to slide through the clutch bell. This is all factory pre-installed as far as the bearings go, and the clutch liner is already on, the bell liner. So we're going to slide our starter shaft through here. You're going to take 1 shim. We're going to drop that guy into here. And then you're going to take your dog collar, 6mm hex. And first we're going to take our bearing block. Then we're going to drop the bearing block into place. Then we're going to take our collar, and you'll notice that there's 1 big flat spot. So we are going to line up one of our set screws with that flat spot, push that guy in, and you're going to want to push this together tight while you put that set screw, put it in Loctite, and then we can mount this in the helicopter. We are now going to start installing the engine, but you'll see I have some goodies here. So these are all sold by gas-powered helicopters, and they are a JC design. So this is the upgraded cooling head, which keeps the same physical size as the original OS GT15 head, but it adds more fins in there, so that way it supposedly gives you better cooling. This is the upgraded high-performance carburetor. So this gives you smoother idle, better carburetor. It's bolt-on. It gets rid of the choke. So again, that's why we're not running a choke servo, because it gets rid of the choke. And then we also have the same JC design isolator block. So this is supposedly a better isolator block, gets rid of this solid plastic block here. So we're going to get all these parts put on, including our velocity stack that's going to go just like that. And then our engine will be ready to get on the bolt, on the mounts, and our mounts are going to go into here somewhat like this. This one will go on that side, outside. So let's get all that ready. Let's get the engine all bolted on the mounts and get it ready to go into the helicopter. Got the old head pulled off the engine here, got our head gasket, head shim. You can see the piston, brand new engine. We're going to change the carburetor over as well. But I just wanted to showcase the difference between the original OS GT15 head and the JC Designs gas-powered helicopter head. As you can see, you have a lot. It's not a lot different, but it's not so much rounded in the corners. So you have more fins. There's also a lot of fins compared to this one, which the stock head has fins, but they're thicker. So more fins to dissipate the heat. You see them sitting side by side of each other. It sits a little taller. It doesn't kind of neck down here and here like it does. So it just supposedly adds a little bit more cooling to the engine. So we're going to get those on. Here is the new carburetor. You can see it's a little bit different design as far as the needles go. It's a bigger carburetor, no choke. Kind of see the difference. So let's get all this swapped over, get the bell mount on it, and see what it looks like. Engine is back together. We have the new isolator block in, new carburetor, Venturi stack. Got the new cooling head, spark plug is in place. So now, if you guys haven't guessed it by now, we are building 2 of these. Bam! We are building twins again. So the blue one is mine, red one is my buddy Andy's. This engine is going to go into my frame. We're going to print a new Venturi stack in red to go onto his, so it matches, it's all red. We are also having my buddy Scott anodize this clutch hub piece, the bearing hub with the one-way in it. That's going to be red, so that way it matches his whole red scheme. But this one's going in mine because I want the blue, white, red, and blue scheme to go along with it. That's why I kept these red USA canopies, of course, to match the whiplash gassers. So let's get this engine on the mounts and ready to go in. We are moving on to the fan and the clutch itself. So run your Loctite on your 4 screws that hold the center hub to the outside of the clutch, and that machine work looks incredible. They did a heck of a job on this guy. Now, if you're going to be running a magnet pickup RPM sensor, you need to epoxy your magnets in. They do include them in the kit. One side would be north facing, one side would be south facing, and use a good epoxy. Put those guys in. Since we are using the X-Guard, when we get there, I'll show it to you. RPM sensor that picks up off of the ignition for the actual gas engine. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to take our engine and we are going to slide this guy down into place. We're going to put our screw through here. You need to pull the back plate and use a crank locking tool. Then we are going to have to put a shim under the screw, drop this nut into place, tighten it down. Do not use Loctite on the nut. And then we will come back. Once that is all tightened down, we will drop our clutch onto here and tighten that down. And then this whole assembly is ready to go into the helicopter. Fan is all installed, clutch is installed, Loctite and tighten down. I did say in the clip a minute ago, don't Loctite the engine nut. Yes, put some Loctite on that engine nut. Make sure when you take the back plate off, that O-ring that goes in there, make sure that that goes back in when you push the back plate back on. You don't need to Loctite the engine screws. Those will just get tightened down. Same with the head screws and same with the carburetor screws. Motor mount are loose, both of them. So now we can install this guy into the mainframe. Engine is in the frame. So you're going to leave all of these screws loose, the 3 on this side, your actual upper clutch bell mount, leave all that loose because we need to set our gear mesh to our main gear. And then you're going to leave the engine mount screws going through here loose, so that way you have up and down adjustability, you have forward and back adjustability. And then we're going to, now that we have all this done, we are going to now set the mesh. So we need to set the mesh to here, and then we need to make sure that our engine is setting perfect in the clutch bell, so that way when we spin it, we're not grabbing the bell like right now, it's a little off. We also need to make sure that our starter shaft spins freely. See, right now it's locked up and it's, there it goes. See how that's working like that. So let's get that done, get everything tightened down, Loctite all of our screws into place, and then we can go on to putting the bottom plate on, getting those screws Loctited, and our fan shroud. We got the engine fully bolted down. We got the bottom plate on. It just slips in and keys into the frame here and here. You just slide it in. That's why you leave the screws out of the other side, so that in the back, so that way you can separate the frame to get this carbon plate in, and then a screw here, and then your skids are going to bolt into here. Now, when tightening the engine down, because it's very, very important, that you get your gear mesh correct. So the gear mesh from the actual clutch bell to the main gear, all that is done. You should be able to rotate your starter shaft with the bearing, so opposite direction, and it should not be tight. It shouldn't bind up. You should also be able to rotate your clutch bell and the starter shaft not move, as well as it not hit or bind up on the actual clutch of the engine on the flywheel. And when you spin your flywheel, you should be able to spin it and not have it grabbing on the clutch. That way we know everything is good, clutch bell's good, engine's in a proper spot. Now that that is done, we're going to do the skids. So of course these go on the front skid. They're the same, front and rear. The only difference is in the rear, you have to add this carbon plate that sits in between the frame like that, and then you put your rear skid on. So let's get the skids on, get the pipes on, and get this thing sitting on its skids. Skids are on. So we have the skids on, we have the pipes on, we have the bracket, everything Loctited. We set our end distance at 35 millimeters. So from the edge of the actual skid itself to the edge of the pipe, 35 millimeters. We put some CA before we push the skid caps into place, so those are glued in. Both of them are on each side. So now we are going to grab the fan shroud, and we are going to get that guy on each side. So it's 2 halves, 1 on each side. Once that's done, we can actually mount the CDI box. That's got to go in here. We got to get that in before we can start working on the fuel tank. So we are putting the fan shroud on the engine, and since we are using the gas-powered helicopter's head that is bigger and the corners aren't rounded like on the original OS head, we had to trim some of the inside of the mount of the fan shroud. You can see we took that upper corner and that lower corner off, and now this fits in there perfectly, just like that. So everything fits flat up against it, perfect. So there's no, before it stuck out about that far. This side you don't have to do anything with. So this side you can just bolt right into place. They are 3D printed. So the cool thing about miniature aircraft is they have a print your own section. You can download the STL file and you can print the shroud. You can print the boom holders. You can print a bunch of parts. You can even, that Venturi is 3D printed. So you can print that in different colors. Like right now I'm printing one in red for Andy's. And I could even print these in blue if I wanted to. And then they would be blue. But I think the red goes well because it's a red, white, and blue color scheme. So we're going to get these on, Loctited, tighten down. This one goes on the other side, same thing, just like that. And then we can start getting the CDI mounted. We got the OS Ignition CDI box mounted. So it's just held in with a piece of double-sided tape for now. We're going to actually go through the frame. If you notice on the bottom side, there's little notch outs, little cutouts in the carbon. That is for a piece of Velcro to go around and just secure it in place so it can't move. It goes under the tank, so even if it comes loose, it can't come up and down, but we don't want it to come loose. So the way this wires up is this black wire is going to plug into the sensor. This wire here runs to the sensor that is on that side of the engine that picks up the RPM. This would just plug together. If you were using a magnet sensor off of the flywheel, you would just plug these two together, this side to your battery, done. But we are not going to do that. So what we have here is the X-Guard OS Max Gasser Ignition System. So this is an RPM sensor that utilizes the RPM that's off of this line right here. So you're going to plug these into this side. So the CDI box is going to go off that top pin. So you'll see how it has the little Futaba style keyhole, that guy right there. That'll go to the top. And then they give you this wire, which goes from the bottom and plugs into here. I'm going to make my own because I don't need it to be this long. So I'll just save this for something else. And then from this side here, which is going to be on this one, which is going to be the top port. So we'll make a wire to go from this top plug. This is for non-Futaba, which we're running V-bar. If you're running a Futaba flybarless unit, you would use the bottom plug. And then this, we're going to probably tuck right beside the sensor or the CDI box. So that'll probably go down there because we're going to be limited on space once we get the tank and all the plumbing and everything. And our V-bar is going to go up here. So this will allow, this little guy right here will allow us to run RPM. And this will go to the governor port just off of our CDI box that's already there. No need to add a separate sensor. So we're going to get this plugged into here, kind of get this part wired up, and then we can start working on the fuel tank. So with the plug wire, I just went down, out, and I put a zip tie on the frame here and on here, and then ran right up into the spark plug. So it's nice and clean, out of the way. I was going to go underneath, but I feel like this looks cleaner. Canopy will cover all of it. Put the blue fan shroud on mine, so that way it all matches. And then we got Andy's here. We put the red fan shroud on his. We got the engine in it, all bolted up, clutch, everything done. I 3D printed a red velocity stack. So if you look down inside of mine, you can see the blue velocity stack. And then when you look into his, you can see a red velocity stack. So just like on the Whiplash gassers, Andy's was all red, mine was all blue. We got red skid pipe for his. I need to order blue ones if they make it for mine, or anodize these blue so they all match. But both helicopters are at the same state. So now we can move on to making the fuel tank, getting that set up, and then starting on adding our Cyclic front, elevator and aileron servo, and start building the head, and then put the tail boom on, and this thing is ready for wiring. It's coming together quickly. So now we are going to assemble the fuel tank. We are not going to plumb or final mount it. So we're just going to get the clunk in, the line in, and we'll just run our screws but not tight them because we need to finish the wiring from our X-Guard RPM box. We need to make a plug, and then we need to also figure out we need power directly to here. So we'll have two batteries, one for the FBL, smaller one for the ignition. So for the time being, while we finish our build and we wait to do the wiring, we'll just leave all of this in here. That's where it's all going to live, and we'll get the tank in. So on the fuel tank, same as the Whiplash gasser tank. So there is a vent line up here, which again, we'll have to run a vent and coil it out. And then they'll give you this little guy here where if you wanted to drill and add a fill line. You could drill the tank and add this at the bottom. You could add this to the top, however you wanted to do it. We're just gonna fill off of the carburetor line, so we're not gonna do it like that. Now, the nipple goes through your rubber gasket, a carbon plate, a metal washer, and then your nut. So you're gonna wanna cut your line. So what I do is I line it up right to there, and then I want the clunk to almost reach back, basically reach the back, but it needs to be able to move freely. So that's how long it is. Let's get this installed and see how it looks. Tank is done. Clunk moves around freely, doesn't hang up. So we're good with that. So now we got our tank mount here with our rubber Loctited. So we're just for now going to slide the tank into its home so it gets on its rubber feet. Then we're going to come back in. We are going to get this guy installed. It goes the longer side towards the back, shorter side to the front, and we are just going to put these outside screws in, but not Loctited. So next we are going to get our front Cyclic servos installed. I still need to install that back servo, which I will do right after I get done with these. So of course we are using MKS X6s all around, low pro servos. You're gonna need these little carbon fiber brackets, little spacer plates that go on there. Now, depending on the servo you are using, will depend on if you need to space this out or in. I'm gonna assume by these servos and where they line up that they don't need the spacer, but if your servos are really long, you might need to space them out. So let's get those done and installed. Servos are in. I cut the screws off, so now I'm going to go back through with a file and just clean them up so they're nice and flattened. Micro lube on the shaft. So now we are going to take our swash plate is assembled, so everything is Loctited, including our anti-rotation pin. You can see that the longer balls go on the inside, and then one thing you're going to have to do before we put it on is there's a set screw that goes here and a set screw that goes there. So you're going to Loctite that just till it stops. Don't over tighten it, and then we'll start assembling our actual servo to swash plate links. We got all three of our linkages done. Now the front ones are at 17.5 millimeters, and that's from the inside to inside. And the rear one is at 18.5, so make sure you do that. Now we are going to start assembling the head. Now you get two dampers. You get a 90 and an 80 pack in your kit. We have our feathering shaft. This is Andy's interceptor. So we are going to set this one up with 3 80s on each side. So 80, 80, 80. The kit tells you to do 90, 80, 90. But again, since Andy is a sport flyer, this helicopter is going to have a little bit more dampening in the head, make it a little softer. So we're going to do 3 80s on each side. And then in mine, we'll do 90, 80, 90. So let's get the head block assembled, the blade grips assembled, and see what this thing looks like. Head is assembled, very straightforward. Just put your thrust bearings in. Of course, larger ID towards the hub, smaller ID, your two shims in. Head is nice and smooth. So now we are going to take our washout arms that are factory assembled, and we want to make sure XL is facing out. And those guys are going to go there just like that, screw through each side, and then we can mount our entire head to our main shaft. Head is complete all the way down. We got our linkages on, 37 millimeters or 34 millimeters in between here. These are non-turnbuckle. These are turnbuckle. That is all on. When you put your screws through here, the pinch screws, they just go all the way through to a nut on the back side. So make sure you Loctite those, but you don't Loctite this one because it is a lock nut. So this one is complete. Let's grab the other one, get the head done on that one, and then we can move on to the tail. And both of them are at the same stage. Head's done, servos mounted. Now we still have to get our servo arms on, ball ends on those. I just got word that Scott finished anodizing the hub red, and it looks great. So once it gets here, this one will be all red. And I'm gonna 3D print these in blue. So that way it's blue, or I'm going to leave them red so it goes with the red, white, and blue. And I want to get blue skid pipes to go with the scheme of the canopy. All right, next, we're going to grab our tail booms. Blue for this, red for that. We're going to get the booms on and start building the tails. Next step is installing our boom. So we have the colored aluminum boom. This is an option. The kit comes with a carbon fiber boom, but we opted to go with a red one for the red interceptor and a blue one for the blue interceptor. We have our tail casing here. This tail casing is the exact same on both sides, so it doesn't matter which way you insert it. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to take our tail belt and we are going to fold it over, wrap it with a piece of blue tape, that'll help us push the belt through. We're gonna push it through, make sure that this notch is up and that notch slides into that screw right there. So get your belt pulled through, get your casing on, and get your 2 screws in. We're gonna start assembling our tail case here, and we have all of our stuff laid out that we need. These little guys are what the idler pulley rides on. So the threaded end is going to go into this upper hole. You want the flange bearing towards the inside and the bracket on the outside. So you would Loctite this guy right into here, just like this, screw it in. And then again, the idler bearing will sit right on top of it. And then your tail pulley is going to have 2 different set screws, if you can see this. So there's a set screw with a little bit of a divot in it and a regular set screw. The divot set screw is going to go on the side with the divot in it here. And then the opposite side of the tail shaft that has 2 divots, 180 off of each other, is the side that the tail hub is going to go on. We are also going to grab our tail belt, pull it, and turn it 1/2 rotation to the left before we start assembling. Tail casing is complete. We got the tail fin on. We wrapped it in the USA flag because the canopy is the USA scheme, same as the Whiplash gassers. So we got both sides done. It all looks fantastic. Belt is going the right way, so tail rotor spinning counterclockwise, and the head should spin clockwise. So again, just 1 rotation to the left is all you need. So now let's do the exact same thing on the blue one, and then we'll start assembling the actual tail rotor. So something came in for Andy's red interceptor. We can't have blue. So again, massive shout out to Scott. He does all of our anodizing, and he does an incredible job. He even put it back in the factory package to make it look factory. But we got Scott to anodize the hub red. So let's get this blue hub off, get the red hub on, put it back together, and then the interceptor will be all red. New one-way bearing hub is installed. We have our shim all the way up. So now we have no play, but now it just ties this interceptor together. All red everything. So now we're going to get onto getting this servo mounted, and let's start wiring this thing up. Red and blue interceptors are at the same point. So we got the American flag going on the tail fins. We got the blue boom on mine, red boom on Andy's. They're right there. So now we just have to start building the tail hub assembly, the tail rotor, get that done, the pitch slider, and then push rod, and start on with wiring these things. So let's get the tail rotors done and see what they look like. I have the tail parts laid out here so you can see everything we have. I did have to install our ball end onto our bell crank. It comes pre-assembled though, and our pitch slider comes all pre-assembled, so you don't have to do anything with that. I went with the middle hole on the ball end there. So there's 3 positions. I went with the middle position. Now we have our screws here for the tail grips that go on the hub. These set screws go one on top and bottom, and on the actual tail shaft, there is a notch, a dimple there, and a dimple there. These tail grips are plastic, and they are empty. They are not loaded, no bearings. So you're going to put 1 bearing, one of these bearings, in on this side. So it'd be that one, this one on this side. They're the same. And then you're going to assemble your ball or your thrust bearings here. So your thrust bearings go inside. That's the way it's lined out. So you're going to have your bearing, a shim, smaller ID, thrust bearing, larger ID, stack all together, push it into the top just like this, stack it all in, and then you're going to have a bearing that goes on here and here like that. So you'll have 1 bearing on the inside, your thrust bearings all be stacked, and then 1 bearing on the outside. Slide it on your grip and Loctite it all down. You want the actual hub here. You see how it's angled flat side to the back of the hub, and your ball end will go on this side, and we'll use that outside hole. So let's get all of this assembled and see what it looks like. When building the tail bearings, I didn't notice this until just now. They're 2 different sizes. So there's it's a deeper bearing and a shallower bearing. So this bigger bearing goes in the back of the hub, and the thinner bearing goes in the front right underneath of, or right on top of your thrust bearings, and it should look like this. So your spacing should be perfect right there. I'm going to end part 1 of the interceptor gasser build video off here, and in part 2 we will get these things finished up. This video is already getting long enough. and I don't want it to be a super long video. So we got everything built on both of these machines. We still need to build out the tail push rod and that kind of stuff, but we have all of our linkages done, and now it is time to start wiring. So in part 2, we will completely wire these helicopters up. We got to run 2 batteries, ignition, etc. We'll go over all of that. We got our V-bars are mounted now, and we have to get all of our wires ran. So we're going to do that in part 2. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching this build video. If you haven't already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Take care, and have a great day.